Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It's my distinct honor to introduce for a second time today Professor Mo Jamshidi, who's here today with colleagues from the Tech Lab Center at kind of co-conducted by the University of Texas San Antonio and North Carolina A&T. So this morning, Mo gave a wonderful talk on system of systems and big data in the future. And this evening, this afternoon, we have a wonderful talk that he's agreed to give on Persian science and related history. And so, given that we have precious little time, I'm not going to go through the long introduction. But as I said earlier this morning, just saying how many societies Mo is a fellow in would already take more time than I have. So I think that probably gives you the indication of the tremendous accomplishments he's made. And what you're going to see, I think, today is how he's also very much a humanist, and in my particular case, a mentor for me. So for all those reasons, let's give a warm welcome to Professor Mo Jamshidi.
I guess you remember how much I paid him to say all of those things. My talk is going to have a lot of slides, and it's longer than definitely the time I'm allowed to do. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm leaving all the slides behind, and I will give you links to 2 existing lectures already in the subject. But today's lecture is the most relevant and most up-to-date lecture I have collected together, including some of the top scientists of today coming from Iranian background. So I'm going to give you a quick piece about the goal of the project, which is a book in English, later on Russian, Arabic, and Persian languages. I will talk about Khwarazmi, who is the creator of algorithm and algebra and trigonometry. Talk about Razi, who is the first pediatrician in the history of mankind. Based on all what I have obtained on the internet and other places, Biruni, Bu Ali Sina, and Khayyam, and Tusi. Those are 6 top scientists of Persia, of Persian background. Poets of Iran, I talked about Ferdowsi, Rumi, and Sa'di, and Hafiz. The last 2 poets were born and died in my hometown, Shiraz. Okay. And I always went to their tombs throughout my childhood and adult time. Never knew a lot of things about them that I dug and I found now. And then we'll talk about summary of the key impacts of these people. Then I will make a tribute to our late Professor Maryam Mirzakhani of Stanford and my mentor, late Professor Lotfizadeh. And then final regard. And I will also mention that this is as Iran and Persia, as any other country, has several different groups of people for living together. This I have found top scientists of background in Azeri, Baluchi, Elamites, Gilanis, Kurdish, Medes, Persian and Turks, and so forth. And I've gone as far away as 560 BC of the Archimedes time of Cyrus the Great. In Iran, unlike many other countries of the world, we don't celebrate Independence Day because we never accepted the rules of the invaders whatsoever. We kicked them out eventually, and we kept our country together. Oh, I'll keep going back. And here they are, who they are: Khwarazmis, mathematician, scientist; Razi, scientist, chemist, physician, and so forth and so on. In order to save time, I'm going to go faster. Khwarazmi was born in Khwarazm, a city in today's Uzbekistan. And in reality, at the time, was the greater Khorasan province of Persia. Khorasan right now is a couple of provinces in today's Iranian map. But before that, it included Afghanistan, part of Tajikistan, and quite a bit of Uzbekistan. That was called Khorasan. And in that Khorasan, Khwarazmi, Bu Ali Sina, Farabi, and many others were born. Okay. And the reason I said this volume is volume on facts, because as soon as I introduce in this presentation and book, and I show the map of the Persia at the time, and show them where they were born. Okay, this is a map of Persia at the time of Khwarazmi's birth. Khwarazmi created the field of algebra. For the first time, mathematics, thanks to his work, was branched into different subjects, algebra and trigonometry. And he put the numbering system from 1 to 9 and was looking at a problem, how can he show negative number? Everything he had was positive numbers. So he found that in India, there is a book written by a concept of a zero, what he called zero later on. He found it in that book and brought it to Khwarazm, and then he basically added zero to the numbering system. And that opened the door for negative numbers and algebra, additional things for algebra. Okay. And he also is the one who created concept of repetitive algorithm in computer application and computer science. In fact, his Arabic name is Al-Khwarazmi, which is what they changed it to algorithm. Okay. And then if you also look at the internet, aside all his contribution, NASA has created honored him by putting a North Moon crater in his honor. Razi is another one which actually was born in the city of Ray, which is even now a suburb of Tehran. And he also called Razaz in the birth. This is the situation at that time, and he was born somewhere close to Tehran. And yeah, okay. And as you can see from this picture, he is examining a young girl. He is the first known pediatrician in the history of medicine. And some of my pediatrician friends, Americans, are telling me the same thing. It's nothing that I created, that concept or idea. He built several hospitals in Ray and Baghdad. These are some of his books. And he also discovered alcohol and sulfuric acid. The Bulletin of World Health Organization in 1970 said his writings on smallpox and measles show originality and accuracy, and his essay on infectious disease was the first scientific treatise on the subject. It's being quoted. All right. Again, he was honored also by NASA and crater on Moon under Razi's name. Then comes Ferdowsi. By the way, these presentations are in chronological order, the way they were born. Okay, so I have put them all into that order. Ferdowsi is the poet which has written up to today the longest sections of poets written by one poet, one person. He has spent 30 years of his life to create one book of poetry. And the reason he did that is because he wanted to safeguard Persian language. Okay, and he says, that's again the map. He says, "Basi ranj bordam dar in sarsi, ajam zende kardam bedin parsi." I have struggled much these 30 years in order to revive the Persian language, or Ajam. And people are asking, for example, to some colleagues in Egypt and other parts of the so-called Arab world, and said, how come you guys with 5,000 years of history, you are changing to Arab language? Nice seeing you. And they said, the only reason is we didn't have a Ferdowsi in Egypt. Okay.
Well, is that, there's also a major university in
Absolutely.
Ferdowsi
Sure.
University.
You know one of the professors there.
I do,
I
yeah.
know. Biruni was a fantastic genius. He was born in, again, close to Kharazm, part of the Greater Khorasan, in 973, in 10th century. And what he did was absolutely amazing. Again, this is where he was born, basically between two different centuries, so I put both maps there. And he, in his book, he had actually, oops, sorry about that, this goes a lot faster than I wanted to. As you can see, he actually is a page out of his astronomy book, which shows the concept of eclipse and the various positions of sun and moon together. In about 1,000 years ago, he wanted to measure the radius of the earth. So what did he do? He went to a part of today's Uzbekistan or Kharazm area, by the sea, close to the water, which happened to have a tangible mountain next to the beach. So he put two spots on the beach, this point and that point, and measured this with an astrolabe device that they had at the time, measured theta 1 and theta 2, and of course he also had D. So as you know, in triangle, you get 3 values and you can figure out the rest. So he used that information to estimate H, the height of the mountain. Then he took the entire group and his surrounding people and the device. He went to the top of that mountain and looked at the horizon when the sun was set and measured this angle theta, looking at the horizon. And so as you can see, this is unknown, this is unknown, this is available, and he already knows the height of the mountain, so this is also partially known with trigonometric formula, which is in the chapter in the book, which I didn't put it in here. He calculated the value of the radius of the earth within 1%. No computer, no cloud, no calculator, nothing. And again, he also has thanks to NASA, honored place. Avicenna, which is probably one of the more famous of all the Persian scientists, was born in a city called Bukhara, which at the time was the Samarkand, which is another city next to it. I have been there personally, was the capital of the Tamerlane dynasty, or Timur, that we say in Farsi. And in those days, there was no National Science Foundation. There was no funding agency where poets to do any work, because they needed to put 100% of their time on what they want to do. They had no other desire to job to earn money. So he had to be in the royal court of kings after kings after kings. Starting from Khorasan area, he made his way to another city, Isfahan, and then went to Hamadan, another kingdom, came back to Isfahan, and then go back again to Hamadan. So he, again, the map here, and his major contribution is the canon of medicine, which has several chapters and treats numerous diseases of that time, which are still relevant right now. And a few years ago, I was reading the English version of canon, and I was donating it to one of my doctor friends. And I opened it, believe it or not, he said, red wine is better for you than white wine. It's incredible. It's really incredible.
Do you know if it's accurate?
Yes.
Do you know if it's accurate? The red wine is better than.
Yeah, that's what doctors say.
Oh, okay.
For lowering cholesterol. So, and he had also interest and extensive studies of herbal medicine and medicine from China, India, and of course Persia as a whole. So he was somewhat outspoken, never got married, and unfortunately died very young, about 57 for this time, maybe not so young at that time. But he argues against a lot of blind acceptance of any authority, any theory, and improved distillation techniques without experimentation and actually confirmation through experience. That's why he was basically practicing all the time. He also reached to the prime minister of one of those kingdoms, and later on they throw him in the jail. And he was able to escape, change his configuration and get out to freedom. And this is the content of medicine. He says, I read the English to save you time. I grew so big that no city could hold me, but my price went so high that everybody sold me. So he went from kingdom to kingdom to kingdom until he finally died in Hamadan. And his place is there. And again, you can see his moon crater. Next is Khayyam, which is an amazing individual. Khayyam is a mathematician, astronomer, and by what I say a little somewhat unfortunate, his poems were translated first. And so his rubaiyat, his poems here, was translated first time by Englishman Edward Fitzgerald in 1809. So the world thinks that he's a poet. And the fact is that only 1/3 of rubaiyat Khayyam belongs to Khayyam. His students and others who were also poets, they added their own and they said, okay, publish it now. So that's what I'm reading about that. See, I'm not, don't quote me, but quote internet. So, but Khayyam was the one who, to basically, oops, sorry, I'm going back again. Look at this. He was commissioned by King Seljuk Sultan Jalal to create a calendar. He spent several years to finally come up with a calendar because the king could not collect taxes on time because they didn't know when the next year comes. It was just a continuous living and continuous looking at the moon and looking at the horizon. So he estimated the length of the year to be 365.2429858,156 in this time. And after 10 centuries, that figure is still relevant. So Khayyam is unusual because he's a mathematician and used a lot of geometry to solve algebraic problems. And then he was an astronomer and created the Jalali calendar, which is now called Islamic calendar. And at the same time, he was a poet. Okay. One of my mentors, who is still alive, reminds me of Khayyam. I'll give you the slide later. Tusi, coming out of the Tus, which is in current location of Khorasan, was a scientist of the 13th century, and he had over 150 pieces of published work, over 25 of them in Persian, a few in Turkish, and they were also in Arabic. In those days, Arabic language was a very popular language because of the spread of Islam And therefore, a lot of them actually did that. He was commissioned by grandson of Genghis Khan, who we call it Hulagu, to create an observatory in a city called Baraqeh in today's Azerbaijan of Iran. And this is what's left of it. But fortunately, the current government and the government before the revolution actually paid attention and built a modern and current, which is the current observatory. And after that, the rest of the Islamic world learned how to keep doing that, and so they asked him to make another observatory in Kharaz, another observatory in Baghdad, and so forth. Bon voyage. Okay. He contributed in biology and wrote a very famous book. He envisioned the concept of evolution several hundred years before Charles Darwin. He recognized that you have matters, you have plant, you have animal, you have human, and there's got to be a relationship between them. You can see here that his conjectures and findings of Toussaint were brought up 6 centuries before Jean-Baptiste Lamarck and Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace in 1856. He contributed to chemistry and physics, in logic. He supported Avicenna's work in logic and wrote complementary work with Avicenna's theory of absolute proposition. In mathematics, he had basically a book on trigonometry, which is used by other scientists, and of course NASA also honored him too.
Excuse me,
Now,
can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
About the evolution, did he actually say that, like, something like...
yes, it's in his book.
Like, did he say just there is a relation, or he said, like...
He said there must be a process where they evolve into
Like,
human.
one species can get to, a difference. Did he say that?
Right.
Okay. It's new.
Now, Rumi, or Maulana Rumi, is probably the first Sufi poet of our times. He was born in Balkh, at that time Khorasan, Greater Khorasan, which is now Balkh, is in Afghanistan. And at the time he was 12 years old, the onslaught of Mongol was coming from east, from Mongolia and China and other places. And they were just destroying everything on their path. So his father, who was also a top scientist, especially in theology, the whole family decided to migrate, get away from that area because of Mongol. So it took them many years, maybe 13, 14 years, they were on the road. And they went through Mecca and Medina, and then finally got to Damascus. And then they ended up in Konya, which is a city in the center of Turkey today. At that time, Byzantines and so-called East Roman Empire was in charge. That's why his name is called Rumi, because Roman Empire was there. And he ran into another Sufi person called Shams. And Shams basically dominated him for about 10 years. And basically, he was thinking of Shams to be Rumi, another copy of Rumi. And they were together talking and working and getting closer to loving the Lord and God for a long time. And it was because of Shams' association that he started becoming a poet. And he got some of his disciples. He said, I said the poem, you write it down. And that's what they did. And after they wrote the poets in 2 of his books, Diwan Shams and
Master.
Yeah, and this is what I said here, Diwan Shams and in Matnavi. And what's very amazing for me, one of the main reasons I added poetry to scientists in this project is because I can see some technical issues in their poems. Look at this. He wrote this poem. آفتابی در یک ذره نهان ناگهان آن ذره بگشاید دهان ذره ذره گردد افلاک زمین پیش آن خورشید چو جست از کمین. Inside each particle is a hidden sun, like a nuclear explosion. Suddenly that particle opens its mouth, the galaxies and the earth becomes shattered in front of that sun when it comes out of hiding. Or it says there is a sun hidden in a particle, the male lion in lamb's clothing. Okay, this is actually in Matnavi, you can go and look it up yourself. And I have put some places where you can find them. And this was written by Professor Naini, who is actually an electrical engineer and also an authority on Masnavi, the book of Rumi. I have met him and I have his book and so forth. A few years ago, my wife and I went to Konya and visited his mausoleum, and the whole city of Konya is dominated by, we call it Mavlana in Turkish. Okay, and he also found, basically developed a habit of spinning around a pillar which is called sama, to basically spin so much to get so much that he no longer looks like he's a human. He was just, everything in his own soul is up there somewhere. Okay, and even now, people have festivals of sama in Konya, and you see the roundabout in the city full of these things rotating in that city. Now, Saadi, this is my hometown, Shiraz. He was born in 13th century and wrote two books, Bustan, the orchard, and Golestan, the rose garden. He also was afraid of Mongol, and he started traveling a lot. He traveled for 30 years away from his hometown, Shiraz. What I didn't know, and probably some of the Persians in the audience may not know, that he was enslaved by crusaders for 7 years where it is now Lebanon. And for 7 years he could not do any poetry, anything. He was just building things and digging out and whatever the slaves do. And that was amazing for me, I did not know. So that's what happened to him. And then of course the Mamluk, which is the slave army of Abbasid Khalifa, they came and paid a ransom, and he went back to Shiraz. And in the halls of United Nations, his poet, which is written here, it says, the sons of Adam are limbs of each other, having been created of one essence. When the calamity of time affects one limb, the other limbs cannot remain at rest. If you have no sympathy for the troubles of others, you are unworthy to be called the name of a human. That's an amazing piece of work in 13th century, someone will tell you. And this is something that Martin Luther King was using. I remember I was here in this country when Martin Luther King was fighting for rights, and the day he was assassinated, I was in this country. He used to say that if your life does not impact the lives of others, you're not different than a human, alive person. You might as well be dead. You see, impact is the key. As a basically goal for your person's life. Hafez came a century later to being in Shiraz. He was a very loved poet because his book which is the divan, is used for finding fortune, or what we call fale hafiz, and frequent use of that point are used in Persian music. I remember those. And this is the time that he was alive. And that's where his hometown is, Shiraz. And the kingdom, the Tamerlan, Taymurid Empire, was in Samarkand. That was the capital city. Now, he wrote a poem which basically, let me see, I don't see that poem. Yeah, he said, اگر آن ترک شیرازی به دست آورد دل ما را به خال هندوش بخشم سمرقند و بخارا. Meaning that beautiful Shirazi Turk took control of my heart, the soul. I'll give Samarkand and Bukhara for the Hindu beauty more. Tamerlan is rumors that told him, what the heck are you doing? I killed myself to get to conquer Samarkand. You're just giving it away. Give it something that you own, not me. So that was a rumor that he did. Let me see. Okay, the next one I'm going to some recent scientist. This is Professor Reza Faz Reza, who is a pioneer of information theory, electric circuits, and authority on Persian poetry, especially the work of the epic poet I brought again, Ferdowsi. And he is knocking on the wood, 103 years young. And when he was 100, I went to his house in Ottawa and put a cake there and put 100 there, 100. And we celebrated his birthday, okay? And in fact, he called me 3 days ago and we were playing telephone tag. Unfortunately, he cannot hear as well as he used to hear. You know, at that age, we never get there. We don't know what's going on. And he resembles me of a modern day Khayyam because he is fantastic in poetry and literature and fantastic in mathematics, electrical circuitry, information theory. His books are amazing. And he graduated from as the first engineering student at the University of Tehran School of Engineering, the first. In the third class was Lotfizadeh, who the whole class was 3 people. You know, you're talking about 1939, around that time. Dr. Samii is a top brain and neurosurgeon residing in Hanover, Germany, and that's his hospital, which looks like a brain, and he basically is going all over the world and performing surgeries. Okay. Professor Jawan is the co-inventor of helium-neon gas laser, whom I honored in Orlando several years ago, and he was among the top 100 living genius of 20th century according to Daily Telegraph. He was number 12. I have that list in my book. And he had several positions. He did that invention at Bell Labs, but he was also a professor of MIT all the way to the end of his life. These are his major publications. I'm not going to bother you with it and his bio. And this is, for example, the celebration of the invention of the laser back in December 2010. That's him and his daughter, Maya, one of his 2 daughters. He only has 2 daughters. Both of them are in Hollywood business, movie industry. And he said, I'm glad you're not in physics. And here is his picture with former Secretary of Energy, Nobel Prize winner Stephen Chu, and again celebration of the National Museum of American History in Washington. Professor Zadeh, we are dedicating again this lecture to both Maryam Reza Khani and Lotfizadeh. You can see both of them here. You can see a picture here. Oops. You can see a picture here of Maryam with the Fields Medal of Mathematics. Fields Medal is the equivalent to the Nobel Prize of Mathematics. Maryam lived to be only 40 years old. What she achieved, honestly, is about 2 lifetime achievements of another mathematician. On YouTube, there is an hour-and-a-half video of a memorial session at Stanford. And his PhD advisor, her PhD advisor rather, who himself is a field medalist, Professor Curtis D. McMullen, he mentioned that if you want to do research, break ground in mathematics is equivalent to reaching the high summit of a mountain that nobody else had done it before. And what did she do? You may wonder. She took on the work of 19th century mathematician Riemann, worked on the moduli space of Riemann, and she discovered formula expressing the volume of moduli space of surface type G and N with given boundary length as a polynomial in those lengths. Through her work, now you can actually calculate the volume of Riemann surface, or a torus, like a donut. It can also be reduced to a simple formula for calculating the volume of a sphere that we know how to do. Okay, and this is actually a picture of Riemann. Unfortunately, Riemann also lived to be only 39 years old. What a coincidence, 39 and 40. And these are honors and medals of Maryam, including not only that field award, member of National Academy of Sciences, American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and many, many others. Unfortunately, I never met her in my lab. If I knew she was having cancer, I would have gone to Stanford. Professor Lotfizadeh was born in Baku, Azerbaijan, on February 4th, 1921. Her father was an Azeri from Ardabil of a city in today's Azerbaijan. And her mother was a pediatrician from Moscow. They got married and he was born on that day. And of course the Soviet Union, communism was being in full swing. At the age of 10, the family decided to go back to Iran. They went to Tehran, and Lotfi, nobody knew where, in what grade they put him. By mistake, they put him in three grades higher than they should have. But he managed anyhow. Okay, and he got his diploma, I think, at the age of maybe 14 or something like that. And they went to University of Tehran School of Engineering, and by the time he was 21, he had his degree or something like that. And then he worked during the World War II, because Iran and Tehran was actually invaded, or for lack of better words, by Russia, US, and United Kingdom during war. They wanted to open a new channel, put a rail from Persian Gulf to send arms to Russia, to Soviet Union, which does. And then he was working for the US Army in Tehran after graduation for 2 years, and he actually received a green card on the flight and came to the United States. In about 3 months on the boat, going around the world and lower part of the Africa, he finally reached US, and he went to Columbia. He went to MIT for master's degree, received his master's degree. Before he was going to continue his education to PhD level, his parents from Tehran decided to also immigrate to America. They came to New York. So he now said, 2 elderly people in New York, what can I do? I don't make much money, I'm a graduate student. The students know how much money they make. Okay? What he said, he went back to New York, to Columbia, and accepted and got accepted as a lecturer, and he got more money. At the same time, he was a PhD candidate. In that group was Rudy Kalman, Eli Jury, Gene Franklin. 10 of the top control engineers, system engineers were also working for John Ragazzini, the department chair and the advisor. And in 1963, he published a book on linear system with late Professor Charles Desor, and the book project was so dominated his thinking that the theory is not enough. There's something is wrong with system theory. Human has no role in it. So in 1965, he published a paper called Fuzzy Sets in Information Control Journal, where he basically introduced human discussions and ideas and what he called fuzzy variables or linguistic variables in a mathematical sense. And shortly after that, fuzzy logic came into being. And you may also have heard, by the way, this is one of my last pictures with Lotfi, with a couple of friends, Dr. and Mrs. Ehtemad, this is my wife Gila, and this is Lotfi. For the last years of his life, he was really on a wheelchair, and he unfortunately was not. I keep telling Lotfi on the phone, start walking, even if it's hard for you. Put the muscles to work. But unfortunately, he just gave up toward that end. And he died at the age of 96, which any of us will take it any day, right? So, one thing I want to tell you, a couple of things, that Lotfi really loved women, not in a bad way, but to socialize with them. Okay, I have known him for 49 years. I testify that he really harmless, according to quote-unquote Faye Zadeh, late wife. And this is a scene from one of the conferences. He received at least 30 honorary doctorate degrees, fellow of many society, member of Russian Academy of Natural Sciences, member of American U.S. Academy of Engineering. That's his lovely wife. We had a long weekend with Lotfi and his wife and Ehtemad in Ehtemad's villa on Lake Tahoe several years ago, at least 15 years ago. And Faye was always under the shadow of Lotfi, which you can imagine why, how. And she had suffered a lot. So I said, Faye, there is a good project for you. Write your book, your story with Lotfi, your travels and your times with what I at that time called him father of fuzzy logic, the life and travels with father of fuzzy logic. This book is also on my free for all website, wakang.org/free books by Jamshidi. You can download that book. Chapter 3 is the key one to read. That's all the important things that she wrote. She was not very appreciative of the way she was treated. Lotfi never read that book. He knew it's not that good. He didn't want to have any hard feeling. Now, how many of you know that you think that Z transform is due to Lotfi Zadeh? You have heard of Z transform? So you don't think it's this, and that's the truth. His Z transform does not belong to Lotfi, nor belongs to Eli Jury, who was also a Z transform person. It belonged to another scientist called Horowitz, about 25, 30 years before them. But Lotfi made it very, very popular. Okay, and so I always make that correction because I know the hard feeling of Eli Jury and others also about that event. You know what happens? Professors publish papers, they forget to put the student's name on it. It happened in Illinois when I was a student. We did all the work, but they did all the publication. Okay. So that book has been translated into Russian and Azeri in Baku, and now Lotfi's body has transferred to Baku, and they have put it in rest in Baku, Azerbaijan. And they claim he's Azeri. I said, if you're Azeri, he's Azeri of Iran because of Ardabil and his father. But anyhow, he used to say that I have lived in so many different nationalities, nations, from Russia, Azerbaijan, Iran, America, and I love all the cultures. I said, Lotfi, your nationality is fuzzy. And in fact, it is fuzzy. It has a membership value of maybe 0.5 Iranian, 0.2 Russian, 0.1 Azeri, and 0.3 American, or something like that. Okay. And he accepted that. So, to summarize key impacts of these 10 individuals, Bu Ali wrote the masterpiece, the Canon of Medicine, which was the key medical text in Latin for 600 years in the Dark Ages. Biruni estimated the radius of the Earth plus or minus 1%, and 1,000 years ago. Khwarazmi created the field of algebra, notion of algorithm, a cornerstone of the field of computer science and programming. Khayyam created Jalali calendar known as Islamic calendar and computed length of the year, so many days. Razi created the world's first encyclopedia of medicine, and he is father of pediatrics. Maulana, the world admired Sufi poet. Maulana has probably 10 million followers in America alone. You can find that for yourself. And he predicted Earth gravity, nuclear explosion, among many other lifelong advices. Sadi, a recognized deep thinker poet, whose verses of helping fellow human is inscribed in the Hall of United Nations. Tusi, his conjectures of finding about evolution of a species came 6 centuries before Charles Darwin and others. Ferdowsi, he revived the Persian language. The reason we are talking Farsi is because of Ferdowsi, right now. And Javan, a genius Persian physicist of 20th century of Azeri background, and 20th century, invented helium-neon gas laser. His main contribution in science have been the field of quantum physics and spectroscopy. He was deprived of Nobel Prize. I know some of his former students at MIT were telling me. Okay, I don't know why his advisor and his partner in the lab got Nobel Prize, but he did not get. Okay. So now these are the links that I will leave behind for you. This link is another lecture like this on YouTube. This is a Persian version of that lecture. This is a slide of the first lecture. This is a slide of this lecture right now, on January 24th. But because I made some changes, I will tell my webmaster to change that and put the latest copy of that so you can download it, including so I want to thank you, and I hope I can live long enough to realize this dream that I have had since the age of 14. It is our intention to translate it in those 3 languages. So if an Uzbeki said, Maulana is Uzbeki, I said, read the book in Russia. Okay? And so forth, and the Arab nations are the same way. I want to thank you very much. Any comments, questions?
I would like to add a comment here. So about Razi, you didn't mention also he was a philosopher. And he had like a little bit of problem with the clergy community, at least, as far as I know. Like one of his controversial things that he said that there should be no prophet in the world, otherwise the God would not be a just God, or something like that. But I realized that that part of his personality is hidden and no one is talking about that. It would be nice if...
Well, the time was short, and I agree with you that Razi was also a philosopher, and he actually was a Jewish, born as a Jewish. He converted to Islam. He went at the age of 25 to Baghdad, which was at that time a place called House of Wisdom. And House of Wisdom was a place for all the scientists to get together. But they were copying it, the pre-Islam John D. Shapur, which was the same philosopher. They just duplicated that concept that they learned about. So he went to Baghdad and talked to another Jewish convert, his mentor for a while, Al-Jabri, something like that. And it's in the slide. Unfortunately, Al-Jabri died a few years after they met. So he went back to Ray and started doing a lot of work on medicine and built a hospital there. And then he was called to go back to Baghdad and build a hospital for them. And he was, as I said, the first pediatrician. Any other question, comment? You look like you have a question. But
I was just wondering, what language would it be? Arabic? That the Persian poet?
yeah, the scientists and poets. To the best of my knowledge, none of the poets of Iran wrote poetry, much poetry in Arabic,
No, I meant that.
pure Arabic. The scientists were publishing a lot in Arabic because that was the language of the time.
Right.
It's like, for example, someone coming from a foreign country publish in English. It doesn't mean that person is from England.
Yes, no,
So that they published it so that more readers can read it. But since Ferdowsi changed the language, a lot of more scientists and poets all went to Farsi and Persian. Yes?
Have you also looked at how they collaborate, how these scientists collaborated with other scientists in, say, India or maybe Europe?
Yes. The question is how the scientists collaborated with other scientists. In those days, as you know, it was not easy to travel. But in case of Khwarazmi, he actually sent a delegation of his people to India and looked around the libraries and so-called madrasas, the locations of teaching schools, and then they found the book that he was looking for. And that book put the initial concept of zero in it, but didn't really live long enough to materialize it, to expand it. And he also, for example, Avicenna was looked at Chinese and Indian and Persian poetry and rather scientific work. But I read that even in the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, there were Chinese scientists there. They were traveling all the way from China there. You know, it was a magnet at the time for a lot of people to get together. Like, for example, now Europe and America, which is a magnet for people to come. You know, it's similar to that scenario. Any other?
What do you mean by House of Wisdom? Was it a university?
House of Wisdom was a name for a duplication of John D. Shapur in Persia before Islam, where scientists, physicians, others would get together at least once or twice a year, and they exchange information. And so John D. Shapur, pre-Islam time, was the first known medical conference in the world. That they had a medical conference there. And so that sort of model was duplicated and called House of Wisdom. You know. And of course, in those days, Teaspoon, which is not far from Baghdad, I have been there, north of Baghdad, was also another branch of knowledge, a school of knowledge and discussion among scientists, aside from John D. Shapur.
So, comment, like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think much of the Greek philosophy that we know today, Plato, Aristotle, were translated by House of President so that it survived over the years?
Yeah, the question is about the Greek philosophies. A lot of them were translated into Arabic of that time, and many of the Persian scientists actually either complemented that or criticized some of the parts of it, which I try to put in the book with references and so forth. That's in fact true. Another question? Okay, thank you very much again. Thank Purdue and thank Professor De Laurentiis for accepting my offer to teach. God.